Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening, and welcome to the 9th Annual Rumi Peace and Dialogue Awards. My name is Jenna Ludke. I am a director at the Rumi Forum. I direct interfaith and intercultural affairs, and I'll be your host for this evening's program. The Rumi Forum, the organization I have the great honor of being a part of, strives to play an important role in bringing together individuals and communities of diverse backgrounds for the benefit of social harmony and cohesion. Our mission at the Rumi Forum is to facilitate and to contribute towards a more peaceful coexistence among people of all different backgrounds of faith, culture, nationality, and ethnicity. The Forum was founded in 1999 with the mission to foster intercultural and interfaith dialogue and to stimulate thinking and exchange of opinions on supporting and fostering democracy and peace building, as well as providing a common platform for education and information exchange. The Forum contributes to this ultimate aim by means of conferences, panel discussions, community engagement, luncheons, publications, as well as many other numerous programming, all with the aim of bringing individuals and communities together to understand one another better so that we can serve together the common good. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we celebrate the Rumi Forum's annual Rumi Peace and Dialogue Awards, paying tribute to the life and contributions of Mevlana Jalaluddin Rumi, the Forum's namesake. The Rumi Awards honor extraordinary individuals and organizations who have greatly contributed and dedicated their time, energy, and leadership to the causes of dialogue, understanding, peace, and community service. As Rumi said, be a lamp, a lifeboat, a ladder. Help someone's soul heal. Walk out of your house like a shepherd. Ladies and gentlemen, this evening's awardees have all walked out of their homes a shepherd. Ladies and gentlemen, providing welcoming remarks this evening is the Vice President of the National Press Club, Thomas Burr. Will you allow me to introduce you? All right. Mr. Burr has been a reporter for the Salt Lake Tribune since 2002 and the Washington correspondent for the Tribune since 2005. He covers Congress, the White House, and federal agencies with an eye toward issues that affect the state of Utah and the West. Mr. Burr is a graduate of the Southern Utah University with a degree in communications journalism and public relations. Mr. Burr has been serving as the vice president of the National Press Club since January 2015 and was the club's former chairman and the board of governors in 2013. And he has the rare distinction of being invited to join the Gridiron Club in 2013, and he may be the youngest member yet. Awesome. Welcome him.
Thank you, Jen. I didn't expect such research right there. You must be knowing you're speaking in the National Press Club. Good evening again, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for hosting me here to the Rumi Forum, President Chelik, so much. I appreciate the opportunity. As Jenna stated, I'm the Washington correspondent for the Salt Lake Tribune and the vice president of the world's leading professional organization for journalists. It is indeed appropriate and fitting for the Rumi Forum to hold its annual Peace and Dialogue Awards dinner here tonight at the National Press Club. Your mission is to promote education and exchange of information, opinions, and expertise, and to focus on including a diverse range of viewpoints. The National Press Club also shares those goals, offering a unique facility where we invite a range of speakers with their varied viewpoints to speak their minds and then grill them on their finite points. Over the years from this room, the Press Club has hosted the likes of Nikita Khrushchev, Indira Gandhi, Charles de Gaulle, Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, Muhammad Ali, and yes, recently, Donald Trump. He may have wanted to fire us, but we don't work for him. On a personal note, I'd like to salute the goals of an organization that seeks to foster a better understanding of cultures and religions. I grew up in Utah, the son of a Mormon family. You have no idea how many times I've been asked by someone I've just met how many wives I have or if I wear magic underwear. The lack of understanding and empathy towards different cultures, religions, and races is unfortunate. That's why we should celebrate organizations like the Rumi Forum that recognize and honor the importance of peace building, interfaith and intercultural dialogue, and the importance of understanding people from different worldviews and backgrounds. In that spirit, my deepest thanks to everyone at the Rumi Forum for inviting me to share in this event, and my congratulations to the very deserved honorees this evening. Thank you, and cheers to a wonderful evening.
It is now my pleasure to introduce the president of the Rumi Forum, Mr. Emre Çelik, to the stage for welcoming remarks.
Your Excellencies, award recipients, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to our 9th Annual Rumi Awards ceremony. It gives me great pleasure to warmly welcome each and every one of you to our annual Rumi Peace and Dialogue Awards. These awards highlight the achievements of individuals that have dedicated their lives and their efforts and contributed significantly to the cause of peace, dialogue, and understanding, service to others, and our shared humanity. The Rumi Forum, founded in 1999, hopes to bring together people of different backgrounds around the ideals of serving society and increasing social cohesion through projects of engagement, education, and dialogue, while overcoming ignorance, prejudice at both an intellectual and grassroots level. Our Honorary President, Mr. Fethullah Gülen, has motivated similar organisations to our forum in more than 160 countries that espouse our shared values within the framework of democracy and respect for human rights. Most recently, in an opinion piece in the Wall Street Journal, in reference to standing up for human rights, Mr. Gülen wrote, and I quote, "We must demonstrate these values by showing solidarity with people who seek peace around the world." The main event tonight, ladies and gentlemen, of course, is to celebrate and reflect upon the successes and the example of our award recipients. These awards reflect the sincere efforts of each one of the recipients' service to their fellow human being. We are privileged to have them among us this evening and congratulate each and every one of them for their good work. It is my hope that we can all incorporate into our lives the motivation that drives such success and service. I wish you all the most pleasant evening, and beyond tonight, look forward to continuing the dialogue. Thank you.
It's now my sincere honor and pleasure to introduce Dr. Katrina Lantos Sweat. Dr. Lantos Sweat is a commissioner at the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. She was appointed to the commission in 2012 by Senator Harry Reid and reappointed to a second term in 2014. In 2008, Dr. Lantos Sweat established the Lantos Foundation for Human Rights and Justice and serves as its president and CEO. This human rights organization is proudly carrying on the unique legacy of the late Congressman Tom Lantos, who, as the only survivor of the Holocaust ever elected to Congress, was one of our nation's most eloquent and forceful leaders on belief of human rights and justice. Under Dr. Lantos Sweat's leadership as president and CEO, the Lantos Foundation has quickly become a distinguished and respected voice on many key human rights concerns, ranging from the rule of law in Russia and internet freedom in closed societies to the ongoing threat of anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial. The foundation also supports human rights defenders around the globe through its Frontline Fund and runs the Lantos Congressional Fellows Program in conjunction with Humanity in Action. Each year, the Lantos Foundation awards the Lantos Human Rights Prize to an individual who has demonstrated a commitment to standing up for decency, dignity, freedom, and justice. In addition to managing the Lantos Foundation, Dr. Lantos Sweat teaches human rights and foreign policy at Tufts University. She also taught at the University of Southern Denmark, while her husband, former Congressman Richard Sweat, was serving as U.S. Ambassador in Copenhagen. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Lantos Sweat for our keynote this evening.
Good evening. What a pleasure it is to be with you here tonight. You know, I have the opportunities to speak at many, many different venues, and each community, each gathering has its own sort of special atmosphere and ambiance. But I must say that whenever I have the special joy and privilege of participating in anything sponsored by the Rumi Forum, there is an undeniable quality, even in the air around us, that spirit of kindness, of intelligence, of warmth, of friendship, of somehow being welcomed, not just as a visitor, but as a friend and even a family member. And I sense that here tonight. So I'm so delighted to be with all of you. And I am bringing you tonight the greetings of my mother, Annette Lantos, who is a great friend of the Rumi Forum and was very privileged to be a recipient of the award that some of our distinguished honorees will be getting tonight 2 years ago. And she was hoping to be here, was not able to make it, but she sends her warmest greetings. And I want to say one more thing about my bio, which thank you for all those kind descriptions, but something that was left off is that I'm also the mother of 7 children, which was definitely the hardest job I've ever done. And I often tell people, there were no twins in the bunch. I had to kind of do it the slow, hard way. And my husband, who I'm so happy is here with me tonight, and I are now the proud grandparents of 3. But I also want to say, and then this will be the last of my little personal family stories, that we had only intended to have 4 children. And when I found out that we were going to be blessed with a 5th, I said to my husband, what little Turkish I knew, I said, "This is kismet. This is destiny, this is fate, this is meant to be." And so when our 5th child was born, we named her Kismet. And so we always feel like we have a little spirit of Turkey with us. And she is, they're all wonderful, but she is a very special young lady. So it is, as I say, an honor for me to be your speaker tonight. And I want to commend the Rumi Forum for honoring 4 outstanding individuals, one of whom I've had the pleasure of sitting next to at dinner. The legendary diplomat and peace builder, Ambassador John W. MacDonald, Nobel Prize winner and anti-landmine activist Jerry White, disaster response pioneer Tad Agoglia, and educational and national service leader Jeff Franco at your 9th Annual Peace and Dialogue Awards ceremony. Through their extraordinary service to humanity, these awardees are a wonderful reflection of the values of the Rumi Forum. Since the turn of the century, the Rumi Forum has done an outstanding job bringing people of different backgrounds, worldviews, religions together to share with each other and to learn from each other in a positive way. We need so much more of that. Indeed, since its founding, this forum has been a place where people can articulate their beliefs openly and honestly, while honoring the right of others to do likewise in a respectful fashion. As such, it shares vital ground with the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, or USCIRF, on which I have served for nearly 4 years, 2 of them as chair. We are an independent, bipartisan federal body, and USCIRF provides key recommendations to the President, State Department, and Congress on how the specific right of religious freedom can be protected and promoted through U.S. foreign policy. In so doing, we fight for the rights of members of every religious group around the world, from Muslims to Christians, Jews to Buddhists, Hindus to Baha'is, Yazidis to Falun Gong. We fight for their right to practice their faith nonviolently, as well as for people who do not practice or profess any faith at all. And I often say, when people say, now tell me about religious freedom, I say this is a broad and a capacious right that really encompasses at its heart the right of each one of us to live our lives according to the dictates of our own conscience. As I stand before you this evening, I wish that I could say that today's world reflects the values of both USERF and this forum, where religious freedom and other rights are respected and people of different faiths, ethnicities, and cultures coexist in peace. But sadly, I cannot. Sadly, we must acknowledge that the same malignant forces which oppose peaceful coexistence also oppose religious freedom. Today, as a USERF commissioner, I will focus my remarks specifically on the religious freedom side of this problem. I will discuss why religious freedom matters, how it's in jeopardy by both governments and non-state actors, including violent religious extremists, and how we must respond to the situation. So let's begin. Why does religious freedom matter? A key reason is that religious freedom is a pivotal human right that goes to the core of who and what we are as human beings. The fact is that as human beings, we are drawn to ponder life's deepest questions and seek meaningful, truthful answers. People should have the right to ask and answer these questions as best they can, and to be true to those answers as they live out their lives. But whenever people are coerced or compelled to speak or act in contradiction to those answers, they are being forced to live inauthentic lives. What that means is clear. What they are on the outside bears no relation to who they are on the inside. Because this precious right of conscience is so central to human personhood, we would expect that in places where it is dishonored, societies would be less contented and secure. And indeed, according to a growing number of studies, that is precisely the case across the globe. These studies show that countries that protect religious freedom tend to be more secure and stable than those that do not. And nations, conversely, that trample on this freedom provide fertile ground for economic and political instability, war and poverty, terror, and radical movements. In other words, not only do religious freedom abuses violate the core of our humanity, they do grave harm to the order and well-being of societies. They do so politically, as religious freedom abuses are correlated with the absence of democracy and of broad political participation from religious and ethnic groups. They do so economically, as religious persecution destabilizes communities and marginalizes the persecuted, causing their talents and abilities to go unrealized, robbing a nation of added productivity, and reducing that nation's ability to fight poverty and create abundance for its citizens. They do so civically, since wherever religious freedom is dishonored, the benefit of religion in molding people's character is diminished, and with it, the self-discipline necessary to handle the rights and responsibilities of citizenship. And finally, they do so socially, since wherever religious freedom is abused, peace and security become ever more elusive. In other words, protecting religious freedom is not only a moral imperative, but a practical necessity that is key to a safer, more stable, and more secure world. By any measure, religious freedom matters greatly. But sadly, country after country perpetrates or tolerates serious religious freedom abuses in numerous ways, from burdensome rules on building houses of worship to detention and imprisonment, torture, and even murder. Such abuses are clear violations of international human rights standards, treaties, and covenants. Among them is Article 18 of the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which reads as follows, and I quote, "Everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. This right includes freedom to change his religion or belief, and freedom, either alone or in community, with others, and in public or private, to manifest his religion or belief in teaching, practice, worship, and observance." As I said, it's a broad, capacious, inclusive definition. As we at USERF indicated in our latest annual report, which we released this past spring, religious freedom conditions worldwide show almost no signs of improving over the past year, and the situation remains especially dire in countries we cited as perpetrating or tolerating the very worst abuses. Such nations include those USERF recommended that the State Department designate as countries of particular concern, or CPCs. That's the legislative term of art that our authorizing legislation provides. And that designation as a CPC country marks them as the world's most severe violators. Our report also included those we listed as Tier 2 countries due to violations that, while not rising to CPC status, remain very serious. When we reviewed the 16 countries we recommended last year for CPC status, we saw little improvement and, in many cases, signs of further deterioration. In addition, our commission was compelled to add a 17th country to our list, the Central African Republic. Regarding Tier 2 countries, religious freedom conditions likewise remain troubling. Russia's continued failure to respect religious minorities at home and in territories it has occupied merits its Tier 2 status. Within these nations, religious freedom violators consist of state and non-state actors. Some state actors, like the governments of China and North Korea, are secular tyrannies, which suppress religious groups across the board. Others, like the governments of Iran and Saudi Arabia, enthrone a single religion or religious interpretation while persecuting those who embrace alternatives. These state actors abuse religious freedom in many ways, including imprisoning people due to their religious beliefs, action, or advocacy. China, for example, handed Ilham Tohti, a respected Uyghur Muslim scholar, a life sentence for alleged separatism. Iran keeps hundreds of people, from Baha'is to Christians, Sufi and Sunni Muslims to Shia Muslim reformers and clerics, imprisoned for reasons relating to religion. But not even electoral democracies are immune from holding religious prisoners. In Pakistan, more people like Aisa Bibi, a Christian farmhand who is on death row for alleged blasphemy, and there are many, many more people like her being held in Pakistan on death row or serving life sentences for blasphemy. More are held in Pakistan, an electoral democracy, on charges of blasphemy than anywhere else. Pakistan's blasphemy laws not only violate freedom of religion and expression, they embolden extremists to assault perceived transgressors. These attackers have increasingly victimized Pakistan's religious minorities, from Shia to Christians, Hindus to Ahmadis. For these reasons, we have urged the State Department to designate Pakistan as a CPC. Over the past year, non-state actors have been fueling some of the worst humanitarian crises of our time. Among them is ISIL. From Yazidis to Christians, Shia to dissenting Sunnis, no religious group has been free of ISIL's depredations in Syria and Iraq. Boko Haram has cut a wide path of terror across Nigeria, which a USERF delegation visited this past May. In Burma, Buddhist extremists have assaulted Rohingya Muslims. And in Central African Republic, fighting between Christians and Muslims has destroyed nearly every mosque in the country. When it comes to governments or state actors, the process of publicly designating the worst violators as CPCs is a valuable tool in the effort to promote religious freedom. By bearing witness in a public way, we keep faith with the victims, we rally support for their rights, and we bring pressure to bear against government violators by publicly shaming them for abusing basic rights. But when it comes to non-state actors and their violent religious extremist ideas, a key answer is to empower others to defeat them with better ideas. Yet doing so requires a free and vibrant marketplace of ideas. It requires strongly reaffirming the right of religious freedom and the efforts of its advocates to weave it into the fabric of their societies. To be sure, without the violence of ISIL and other groups being diminished, there can be no marketplace of freedom. But without this marketplace, their ideology can never truly be defeated. With it, with that free marketplace, people will have the opportunity to choose alternate beliefs and ideas, thus weakening these organizations at their root. In other words, when it comes to violent religious extremism, religious freedom is not just a casualty, but in the long run, it is also an antidote. Or, to put it a different way, the long-term way to win the struggle against violent religious extremism groups is to dissuade people from joining them in the first place. So let me ask a fundamental question. What does the future hold for religious freedom? As of today, the landscape around the world admittedly looks bleak. But does the future have to be like the present? No, it does not. Yes, the struggle for this freedom remains an uphill one. But in our time, the call for protection of religious freedom is being amplified as never before. Thanks to an unprecedented information revolution and the power of the internet and social media, it is being heard across oceans and continents, demanding an end to repression and extremism. It is past time, for governments to hear and heed this call for the sake of freedom and dignity, prosperity and security. It is time for us to redouble our efforts to lend our voices to the voiceless and advance religious freedom for all. I'd like to close tonight with a story that I think beautifully illustrates the transformative power of religious freedom to change societies at the granular level, maybe the cellular level, for the better. Many centuries ago, John Wycliffe, the English theologian, priest, and reformer, sought in the 1300s to translate the Bible from the Latin Vulgate into the common vernacular, so that ordinary men and women might be able to read the Bible for themselves. He faced intense opposition and even persecution from the ecclesiastical authorities of his day. But he persisted, and when the work was done, he wrote the following words in the flyleaf of that first Bible, and I quote, "The translation is complete and shall make possible government of the people, by the people, and for the people." Now, when I tell this story to my students at the university, I often quiz them first. Does anybody know where that phrase came from? And of course, in America, every hand goes up and they say, well, that's the Gettysburg Address. That's President Abraham Lincoln. And that is our reference for those famous words. But they have a much older patrimony. Now, we can't know precisely what Wycliffe meant when he wrote those words. But I believe that he was illuminating for us a very profound truth. That when people are free to pursue truth for themselves, they become empowered to build the kind of societies that honor the conscience claims of all of us. Let us work to build those sorts of societies. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll now begin our awards ceremony. The first award of the evening will be presented by Michael Schenk. He is the Director of Media Strategy at Climate Nexus in New York City. Previously, Michael served as the Associate Director for Legislative Affairs at the Friends Committee on National Legislation. Michael is an adjunct faculty and board member at George Mason University's School for Conflict Analysis and Resolution. Board member at Communities Without Boundaries International and senior fellow at the Just Jobs Network and the Global Partnership for the Prevention of Armed Conflict. Between 2009 and 2013, Michael served for 4 years as U.S. Congressman Mike Honda's Senior Policy Advisor and Communications Director. Michael writes regularly for The Washington Post, The Daily Beast, The Guardian, U.S. News and World Report, USA Today, The Washington Times, The Christian Science Monitor, Politico, Roll Call, The Hill, and Huffington Post, among many others. Additionally, Michael is a frequent on-air analyst for CNN, Fox News, CCTV, Al Jazeera, and RT News. Please welcome Mr. Schenk to the stage.
Anybody know what Ambassador McDonald's secret is to an incredible career in peacebuilding, diplomacy? It's right here on this card. Know what it says? The only way to solve a conflict at any level of society is to sit down face to face and talk about it. It's amazing how difficult that very simple act is in international space, and that's his trick. Well, I'm not going to read this bio. It's amazing. I hope you read it. The cities he's been to and worked in, some of the most conflict-ridden cities and countries that were mentioned already tonight, the positions at the State Department, at the UN, at various universities. I hope you read it. I'm going to be a little different in my time with the ambassador because I feel like if anyone represents Rumi, if I can be so bold, it's the ambassador. And I want to give 2 quotes of Rumi that capture the ambassador's work. The first, "Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, doesn't matter. Ours is not a caravan of despair. Come, even if you have broken your vows 1,000 times. Come, yet again, come." Supporting what the ambassador said here. Second quote. "Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about." I want to note that the ambassador has finally made it in having a conversation with Crystal, his amazing partner, who's been an incredible champion in her own right and for the ambassador. I was asking for some recent anecdotes that may not fall into this amazing bio. And she noted that the ambassador had received what I only ever hoped to receive myself, which is the Alumni Achievement Award from his high school in Honolulu, Hawaii. And when you've gotten that award, you know you've made it, if I may say so. I also want to credit his incredible commitment to this work. We serve on the advisory board together. I unfortunately have to call in from New York City. But who is there before the 8 o'clock start time? Every time I call in on the conference call, without fail, the ambassador is there, committed to the work of conflict analysis, conflict resolution at George Mason University. From Tibet to Tunisia, some of his recent work if the conflict field could have a Kevin Bacon, 6 degrees of separation, you bet Ambassador McDonald would be that Kevin Bacon, if I may say. He knows everyone. You mention your work. I've done this several times. I talk about the work I'm doing, and it's like, oh, Michael, I want to talk to you. We've got a project on that very topic. This man has done it all. And now for the formal. Ambassador John W. McDonald is the chairman and CEO of the Institute for Multi-Track Diplomacy. Many of you have heard about it, know it. Ambassador McDonald is being respected this evening by the Rumi Forum for his incredible contributions to public service, through his efforts to address the most salient social, economic, and environmental challenges, not only this century, but the previous century. It's been leading initiatives on every topic imaginable, including the basics of clean water and sanitation to the most desperate of need, and formulating strategies to prevent, transform, you name the word, because in the conflict field there are many, from preventing to transforming to resolving national and international conflicts. The Rumi Forum shares in the vital importance of these fundamental ideals and believes that in these difficult and ever-challenging times mentioned by the Commissioner previously, such contributions made through the means of diplomacy, peaceful negotiations, and education are extraordinarily important to reduce inequity, violence, you name the ill. Ambassador, your work at the State Department, your contributions at the United Nations, and numerous educational institutions, and I've had the honor and pleasure to serve with you at those institutions, have inspired the Rumi Forum to honor you with the Extraordinary Commitment to Public Service Award at the 2015 Rumi Peace and Dialogue Awards. Please join me in congratulating Ambassador John McDonald and welcoming him to the stage to accept the award.
Wow. Is that me? Thank you for that wonderful, warm introduction. And thank you all for the lovely honor that you've given me with this prestigious award. It's a real delight and a pleasure for me and for my wife, Crystal. As you know, I was a U.S. diplomat for 40 years and had lots of stories to tell, but the short time that I've been allowed here, I have one story that I'd like to share with you. How many of you have ever heard of the International Day of Peace? Would you raise your hand? The International Day of Peace. I started that. Let me tell you the story about that. I was a U.S. diplomat assigned to the UN Bureau at the State Department, and I had many years' experience on United Nations economic and social affairs. In the fall of 1981, I was on the U.S. delegation in New York, and I was sitting in the delegates' lounge having a cup of coffee when the ambassador from Costa Rica came up to me. Now, by this time, I was also an ambassador, having been appointed twice by Carter and twice by Reagan. And he sat down and joined me for coffee. And then it turned out he had a problem. He said his president of Costa Rica wanted to start an international year of peace. I said, that's a fabulous idea, congratulations. But I said, I'll have to check the calendar because the UN decided that on odd number of years they'd have international years, and even number of years they'd have world conferences. So I checked my calendar and I said, oh, the next open year is 10 years from now. He said, my God, my president won't be around by that time. So he went away. He came back about 2 weeks later. And he said, you know, my president really wants to do something about peace. So I sat there and thought for a while. And then I said, how about an International Day of Peace? He said, oh, that's a fantastic idea. I said, well, what I'll do is I'll draft a little resolution laying out the whole idea, and your president has to come up from Costa Rica and make that speech before the United Nations, and he takes my resolution and makes it his resolution. And I said, I won't tell the State Department what I'm doing because they won't like the idea. So I learned a powerful lesson a long time ago. If you want to make something happen that really works, you put your ego behind you, not in front of you. And so I gave him my resolution. And the president came up, he took my resolution, made it his resolution, made the speech, and it was adopted unanimously by the General Assembly. And the first International Day of Peace was the opening day of the General Assembly, which is the third Thursday in September every year. And it started in 1982. 20 years later, another resolution was passed, making it September 21, which is in the third week, but is a firm date. So September 21 is the International Day of Peace. And I have made many speeches over the years pushing that whole concept. On the 2013, I made a speech on the lawn in front of the Capitol building, pushing the idea, and at that point, we estimated that 700 million people in the world celebrated the International Day of Peace. I'm proud to announce that this September 2015, September 21, 2015, 1 billion people in the world celebrated the International Day of Peace. And now I've pursued that idea one step further. I've drafted another draft UN resolution. I've given it to the new president of Costa Rica and to the ambassador of Costa Rica at the United Nations. And I have proposed in a short resolution that they put forward the idea of making September 21, the UN International Day of Peace, a national holiday in every country of the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Ladies and gentlemen, presenting the second award of the evening will be Ronnie Lancaster. He is Senior Vice President for Government Relations at Assurant Inc. Prior to Assurant, for 13 years, he served in several positions at the Morehouse School of Medicine in Atlanta, Georgia, including Senior Vice President and Chief Operating Officer. Prior to the Morehouse School of Medicine, Mr. Lancaster served in various roles at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, including Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary for Planning and Evaluation. Mr. Lancaster serves on a number of not-for-profit boards in Washington, D.C. including Providence Hospital, Smithsonian Jazz Program at the Museum of American History, and the City Year. Please welcome Mr. Lancaster to the stage.
Thank you, and good evening. It's my privilege this evening to introduce Jeff Franco. Now, what can you say about a program where 600 of the area's best and brightest compete for the privilege of volunteering in our city schools? A program so competitive that only one of four is selected. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to City Year. City Year, as the name suggests, is a program where young professionals, young kids, best and brightest, typically young college graduates, who before assuming their first professional position or going to graduate school, seek the opportunity to volunteer to mentor in the DC public schools. Now, we're often told that metrics are important. And so, with your permission, I'll share with you a few that will describe Jeff's tenure as executive director. So in his 8-year tenure, Jeff has doubled his staff, he's tripled his fundraising, and he has quadrupled the number of students that he serves. And there are 27 City Year programs around the country located in the principal major cities in our country. And during Jeff's tenure of 8 years, 7 of those consecutively, the other colleague programs have voted the City Year DC program as the most successful. Now, Jeff, I'm sorry, I must confess in front of everyone here a note of some disappointment, because you've been executive director for 8 years, and you've only won that national competition 7. So clearly there's room for improvement. I'm honored to be a member of the City Year Board, and it is with sincere thanks to the Rumi Forum that it is now my privilege to welcome to the stage to accept the Extraordinary Commitment and Community Service Award to the Executive Director of the City Year DC program, Mr. Jeff Franco.
Thank you and good evening. Ronnie is not only a board member, but he's really a mentor, friend, has given me a lot of guidance, and besides that, he's very eloquent, so if I screw this up, we'll still end up okay because of the great words that he said, so thank you, Ronnie, I appreciate that. So this seems like a fairly international group. I'm not sure how many people here know City Year, but it's really become my vocation for the past 8 years. I've had a lot of international experience in terms of my family. My father was born in the Dominican Republic. He was one of 12 children. He was the youngest, he was the only boy, and he was the only one to finish school beyond a high school education. His mother was his greatest mentor, and she pushed him to continue to seek education as a pathway out of poverty. And he ended up becoming a heart doctor, and a prominent one at that here in the United States. And he broke this cycle of poverty and created a cycle of opportunity and privilege for me and my siblings that I've been able to reap the benefits from. My passion behind City Year is because, number one, it's my belief that education equality is a civil rights issue and that everyone deserves a chance to have a good education. The second one is I believe in the power of young people to serve and to change their communities. A lot of people don't know, I've lived in DC for about 20 years, and many people that come to visit here get to see the beautiful things that DC has to offer. DC is one of the smallest big cities in the country. It's also the tale of two cities, in that it is at once the home of some of the greatest educated people in the world, some of the greatest resources and power. At the same time, it's also some of the greatest poverty, murder, crime, HIV/AIDS, and dropout rates. So the graduation rate in this country is about 80%. The graduation in Fairfax County is about 93%. The graduation in Washington, D.C. is about, this year, 58%. And if you go east of the Anacostia River, the graduation drops to about 44%. So it's something that shocks some people, but that the kids' chance of success is oftentimes determined by their zip code, which makes it a civil rights issue. And so what our organization does is that we recruit a group of young people. As Ronnie said, the majority of them are college graduates, some are high school graduates, that commit a year of service of their lives to work in these schools in high poverty neighborhoods. They work in teams of about 10 as full-time tutors, mentors, and role models. And they serve both to help these kids stay in school and on track to graduate, and the program that I run also serves to be a leadership development program for the young people that serve with us, so it really carries two roles. One thing that's really been impressed upon me, I've worked at the U.S. State Department, I've worked at the World Bank, I've always lived in the northwest part of the city. Always wanted to do good in other parts of the world, and I have many friends and colleagues that do that now, working for international organizations. It never occurred to me that my community really revolved not just in the area that I lived, but in the entire 8 wards of Washington, D.C. And I think that I am always pushing my friends to think about that in terms of giving back. It's obvious the people that I've met in this room tonight have done some extraordinary things, and I'm really awed and honored to be sit before you this evening. But I encourage you to think about the communities that extend beyond this area that we're in, really in the areas of Anacostia, where those kids were, many of them are probably just as bright, if not brighter than I was when I was a child, but simply don't have the same opportunities of getting a great education. I've seen firsthand how education really is a great equalizer, and it's really why I fight passionately that young people can have a role, a positive role, here in this city and in this country and across the world. In fact, we have a site in Johannesburg, South Africa. We have 2 sites in the United Kingdom. But it really is just a deep-rooted belief in the power of young people. And the vision of our organization is that one day every young person will ask, where did you do your service year? The idea behind City Year is that you do your sophomore year, your junior year, your senior year, and then your City Year. And that's what 170 young people are doing right now during the course of this year, and we'll get a whole new crop of them in again. And so I believe in community, and I believe that we're all part of that community, and I believe it takes a village to make that community a great place. I'm passionate about DC because it is so small, and we have a great opportunity because there are so many amazing people that live here, that if we really were able to support our other brothers and sisters that are across the river, and in other areas where they don't have necessarily the privilege and blessings that many of us have had, certainly that I have had, we really can make a difference and really make this a model city for many other cities across the country. So I want to thank you again. Coming after the ambassador, I feel like maybe I should have been maybe a notable mention at best, not necessarily standing at a podium getting the same award, but I am honored. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
A lot of tall people in the room. Presenting our 3rd award of the evening will be Dr. Jack Goldstone. Dr. Goldstone is the Virginia E. and John T. Hazel Professor of Public Policy at George Mason University and a non-resident senior fellow at the Brookings Institution. Dr. Goldstone has worked extensively on forecasting global conflict and terrorism, and with the U.S. Agency for International Development and the World Bank on providing democracy assistance to fragile states. His current research focuses on conditions for building democracy and stability in developing nations, the impact of population change on the global economy and international security, and the cultural origins of modern economic growth. Dr. Goldstone is an advisory board member of the Rumi Forum and a life member of the Council on Foreign Relations. He also serves on the advisory board of the Council's Center for Preventative Action. Please welcome Dr. Goldstone.
Well, everyone, distinguished guests, notable awardees, and friends of Rumi, it's a great pleasure to be here, but also a bit bittersweet because I have to say thank you and goodbye. I am moving in January to start a new Institute for Public Policy at the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. So I'm going halfway around the world. But when I go, I hope to carry on the work of Rumi of bringing understanding across nations, cultures, and civilizations. I have to say, it's been an extraordinary pleasure to be involved with Rumi at a time when there's so much conflict in the world, to be part of an organization that in all of its activities promotes tolerance and peace through mutual understanding has been refreshing. More than that, I've basked in the warmth of Rumi. Let me say to Emre, Jana, Mehmet, all my friends at Rumi and friends of Rumi, it's wonderful to be in your circle of friendship, so thank you for that. But my real privilege tonight is to tell you about the extraordinary career of our other extraordinary commitment to public service winner, Nobel laureate Jerry White. Now, I'll go briefly through his career. Jerry is the executive co-chair for Global Covenant Partners. He's known for his high-impact campaigns, 3 of which led to international treaties. He shares in the 1997 Nobel Prize for Peace, awarded to the international campaign to ban landmines. In that project, he worked with the late Princess Diana and then King Hussein and Queen Noor of Jordan to address the humanitarian crisis caused by tens of millions of mines buried in over 80 countries. And for the past 3 years, Jerry has served in government as the U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of State, launching the Bureau of Conflict and Stabilization Operations created by Secretary Hillary Clinton. Now, what is not in your written bio, but I find particularly inspiring, is that Jerry himself experienced a landmine close-up, in fact, lost his leg to that mine. And yet, instead of slowing him down, it seemed to have sped up his steps. It lit a fire in him to serve and find solutions for problems and to help survivors of war and landmines throughout the world. He's also a senior Ashoka Fellow and has worked with hundreds of young leaders from over 60 countries. He served as executive co-chair of the Abraham Park Initiative with founder William Ury, and for 10 years was assistant director of the Wisconsin Project on Nuclear Arms Control, and also reporter-editor of Risk Report, a database tracking the sales of technologies used to build weapons of mass destruction. His founding of the Landmine Survivors Network, and later the Survivor Corps, pioneered techniques for rehabilitation and provided tens of thousands of survivors with peer mentors, artificial limbs, job training, and most of all, inspiration to continue to move ahead and succeed in their lives. It is a great pleasure on behalf of Rumi Forum to honor you with the 2015 Peace and Dialogue Extraordinary Commitment to Public Service Award. Jerry, please come up to the stage.
Thank you very much. I think you were also probably exhausted by all that activity that was just listed in my bio. I think one of the things that I'm in search of is Rumi and true and deeper peace, not necessarily all the activity that keeps me so busy. So I feel actually very humbled to be here. I had thought, like, do you accept awards? Like, what's your position on awards? But the word Rumi is so tempting and so lovely. And the reason why I spent all this time, as you heard, doing a lot of activities, and then I escaped Washington with my lovely wife, Kelly, and daughter Quincy's here, and I have 3 other children. And Washington was so intense that I thought, let's just give it all away, sell, and move after 20 plus years, and go to Malta and have the best midlife crisis in the world of just meditating and learning Vipassana insight and swimming and learning to breathe again. And then I thought I'd extend that midlife crisis and then go study theology, which I'd studied as an undergrad, and then studied at Cambridge. And that actually brings me to a connection with Rumi, which was the other 13th century wonder of Saint Bonaventure, who was also a mystic, Catholic theologian, who took over the Franciscans and wrote the biography and really the legends of Saint Francis. So I went deep. The soul's journey into God is by Bonaventure. And so I don't know, I don't have any answers. I actually didn't suddenly have enlightenment, but I did calm down by being in the Mediterranean and Cambridge and taking some time out. And then I got this phone call randomly while I was studying biblical Hebrew to come and serve my country. And I had never worked in government, and I thought I never would. But there was something about the lineup. President Obama, Hillary Clinton, Ambassador Rick Barton, and the invitation to do something entrepreneurial in government. I thought this, I guess you say yes. And I had the privilege of working with Rashad Hussein here, and many of you have served. And I want to say thank you, because I didn't realize how hard it was and how often you're criticized in Washington for working around the clock in service. So once again, although I had been all Zen Jerry, Rumi Jerry in Malta, I came back to Washington. And the ego came forth. So I have the opposite problem of Ambassador McDonald, who was able to put it behind him. I feel I rage with ego. I wear it, I smell it, it's all around me. And going inside this bureaucracy of competitive testosterone and ego cult, it came back just like a sip of workaholism. And so I was back in it, thought I had cured that old Jerry, but in fact, my ego still raged. I was still as competitive and angry as usual. And I am mad. And so the other thing I feel bad about is if you have an International Day of Peace, one day a year, I feel that 364 days a year are conflict days. I'm fighting and fighting, I'm angry, whether it's landmines that maim people, or the violence against women, or this interreligious attack of killing in the name of God. These are awful and dark things. And so when you're able to bring the light, even like Tasula, a person from Cyprus here, a refugee, who now chases down and watches cultural crime to make sure that we stop the destruction of our heritage, our sacred heritage and culture in the name of God, as well as stop the killing in the name of God, just people and places being destroyed. So I'm back to hurting and being angry and praying that I could be more like Rumi and have the collective wisdom of all of you in this room, that all of us are connected and one. So when I think of the poem of Rumi, and I dedicate it to you, it says, be with those who help your being. That's you. That's us. Be with those who help your being. Don't sit with indifferent people whose breath comes cold out of their mouths. Not these visible forms. Your work, our work, is deeper. A chunk of dirt thrown in the air breaks to pieces. if you don't try to fly and so break yourself apart, you will be broken open by death when it's too late for all you could become. So I love the idea of being with those who help my being, you all, but it's also to help each other and to break ourselves open in service. I mean, truth be told, I was an awful diplomat, like awful. I don't know if I'm a peace builder. In all my days, I'm still find it a mystery to be fully whole and full and juicy like a piece of peaceful fruit. So I'm still striving. I draw my inspiration from Rumi and from all of you or anyone at the Rumi Forum who stands for that fullness, wholeness, shalom. So thank you so much. I'm honored and slightly embarrassed, but it's a great meal, and I think the Global Covenant, which is a new project I'm trying to sort of blow sort of on the embers of, is about a good dinner party like this in an Abrahamic way. Mix it up. From journalists to private sector to social sector, the best parties are mixed up and diverse and interesting, and it's going to take all types, all of us, to address and bring healing to this terrible surge and growth in religion-related violence around the world, the fastest growing social hostility and violence that we're witnessing today, and it doesn't look like it's going to stop very soon. So sorry to go on so long. I'm passionate. If I went on longer, I'd start to heat up, but I want to say lovely Rumi Forum, and thank you, and to my dear wife and family as well. Thank you.
All right, that brings us to the fourth and final award of the evening. Tad Egoglia is the founder of First Response Team America. Couldn't be with us this evening, but I'm going to say a few words about why he's receiving this award, and then we're going to watch a couple of videos on the good work that he's doing. He's been recognized this evening by Rumi Forum for his tireless effort in providing necessary disaster relief for communities in need. The Rumi Forum recognizes with immense gratitude his invaluable hard work and unceasing dedication to minimizing the time it takes to respond to catastrophes. His vital work in responding with his team within hours of a disaster has saved lives and inspired hope within many others, in and outside the communities. Tad and the First Response Team of America are truly remarkable people. Their commitment to service and putting others first has truly inspired us at the Rumi Forum, as all of you have this evening. And he is being honored with the Extraordinary Commitment of Service to the Community Award. Once again, please direct your eyes to the screen as we watch Tad's work. So we've come to the end of our evening, and I wanted to share with you some wisdom of Rumi that we've heard his wisdom all evening. One last piece. With life as short as a half-taken breath, don't plant anything but love. Thank you all for being with us this evening. We're very honored you took your time with us. Thank you.